Gosh, that brings tears to my eyes. Oh, it is exactly 9:31 a.m. News and views on Salam Media, and we are now going to be talking with Christian Julius. She is the District 6 Museum Acting Director and Head of the Archive of the Museum, and we're going to be talking to her about remembering the late Noor Ebrahim, co-founder of District 6 Museum. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone listening.
Our deepest condolences on the loss of Noor Ebrahim, the co-founder of District 6. For how long have you known him and worked together with him?
So, Noor has been with the museum for 30 years, but I've known him for 20 of those years.
It must be very difficult for you talking about it. I mean, he passed away on Friday. What can you tell us about his passing? Was he sick or was it just sudden? And how the family, I mean, one doesn't even know in a situation like this what are the appropriate words and the appropriate questions to be asking.
So, I mean, we will leave that up to the family to clarify, but I think we were aware that he was ill, and but I think that the news of his passing last week Friday was still a very deep shock for us. And so we he retired from the museum in September 2022. And we would always call him to check on how he is. And Noor, he always promised us that once he leaves the museum, he would never come back, because once he leaves the place, he always, he stays away. But we would see him occasionally, and we would call him. And I think during that period, I don't think we were quite aware of the extent of his illness. And so I think the news has been quite sudden, and we really want to send our deepest condolences to his family, and also speak about this moment for them with a lot of respect and care.
Christine, he's left behind an amazing legacy. This museum is world renowned. And I think if he hadn't captured all of those pictures way back with the forced removals in District 6, we might not have been talking now today. We might not have had this amazing museum that is world renowned. Tell us more about this amazing man and the legacy that is left behind.
So I think so for us at the museum, there's sort of two legacies, sets of legacies. I think with the museum says it opened its doors in 1994, but our first exhibition was in 1992. And the way we came to know Noor was through the photographs of District 6 that he used to take as a young man. He would drive around District 6 in his Beetle, and so he would take pictures of just areas that were familiar to him, and he used to sell them and share them with people in the late 1980s already, in a calendar form. When we didn't have a museum, his pictures formed part of exhibitions that would sort of move around, because at that time people were wanting to keep the memory of District 6 alive, but there wasn't a museum. So he was very much part. His spirit of giving was always present. So he wanted to share the pictures because it was his way of keeping District 6 alive. And so in 1992, when we opened our first streets exhibition, his pictures were there. And it's literally a story of he never left. In the early years of the museum, he collected people's stories. And so he would literally, back in the day with a tape recorder, he would capture people's stories as they visited the museum, because he also knew a lot of people. He was deeply involved in the Malay choirs, and so there's a lot of people. He loved rugby. He loved rugby clubs from District 6, and so he was always part and parcel of the social and the cultural life of District 6 as well. And in the museum, he told that story. He was able to share it, and so there's that legacy of education where he was able to share with people what it was like to live in District 6, what it was like raising his family for a short while, what it was like to leave District 6. And that story was so impactful. When you look at social media, you see how many hearts he reached as well. His other legacy is that he was a stalwart of the museum in the sense of he opened and closed every day. He always made sure things were running smoothly. And we relied on him so deeply for keeping us going. And he did that for 30 years. And so there's a deep debt of gratitude that we have towards him. And it's been a very difficult time for us.
I'm sure it has been exceptionally difficult for one and all, but he's left behind such a beautiful legacy. And I think the museum and his family and the community at large will be eternally grateful for the work he's put in. And this is going to go on for generation after generation. This goes down in history, and our future generations will never forget the contribution he has made to keeping the District 6 story and legacy alive. Tell us a little more about the museum. Where is it located? Does it get visited often by the locals? Because you spoke about Noor going out with a tape recorder and recording the stories. How are those stories then being retold when people visit the museum?
So one of the legacies that Noor leaves behind is the fact that in the beginning years of the museum, it was former residents telling their story. And for 30 years, he did that. It was his personal story. He shared that. But it really opened our eyes to the power and the importance of personal storytelling. And so we do have a next generation of storytellers as well. So they might, I think Noor passed away when he was 78. We have a next generation in the sense that they're in their 60s. So we still have District Sixes continuing to tell the story because I think with former residents like Noor present in the museum in the early 90s, it really showed us that that is the only way you can tell the District 6 story. Not some expert, not some academic. It has to come from people who lived in the area. And so I think that's a very important it's a very important marker of how the museum works. We try to include former residents in all our storytelling. And locals do visit the museum, but we know that with school holidays and everything, that's mostly when we see people. Our impact is really with our I wish people could experience our education programs with young people. So whether you are from a township school, whether you're from a rich school, as we would know, say, um, our education program is very powerful in using the story of District 6 and using somebody like Noor's story to talk about what apartheid was, because these young kids don't know. They don't understand. They can't even imagine it. And so we have a very powerful program where there are so many young people that we impact on. And so we like to feel that we do have a local, the locals do get that experience through our programs.
What else can one experience? I've never been, and I hope and pray my next visit to Cape Town will allow me to visit the museum. Where is it located, and what else can I experience visiting the museum?
The museum is located at 25 Buitenkant Street in Cape Town, so it's in the CBD. So if you're coming to Cape Town, it can easily be located. Um, I think the power of the museum is its storytelling. So if you're visiting the museum, you can expect, we always encourage people to make time to book a tour with a guide who's a former resident, and actually to make sure that you have about 2 hours because when you
Wow.
visit the museum, it is it's a sensory experience. You walk into a place that feels like home, and there's so much information, and that information isn't just history lessons. It's also it's people's memories of living and growing up in District Six. So we like to think that the the experience is about entering a memory box and you can find out what happened in Cape Town and what the apartheid government did, but you can really find the personal stories of people. Um, and that it's such a strong feature of the museum. It really is, it's really a fantastic experience.
And are you encouraged by the number of overseas visitors that visit the museum? Are we getting lots of people indicating interest in visiting the museum?
We do. There's many people who come, and for a lot of visitors, it's one of the few places where you can sort of hear about the more personal impact of apartheid in people's everyday lives. How did apartheid shape Cape Town? What did it do to District 6? And how do people feel about it? It's one of the few spaces where you feel that power of personal storytelling. We have lots of overseas visitors, and with COVID, that has been increasing. Um, and I want to just say that Noor was always a wonderful ambassador for the District 6 story in that sense. His stories really brought to life for people who visit South Africa and didn't understand what apartheid was and how it could possibly exist. And his stories really enlightened them and educated them. And so his impact is so far reaching. It's that we I think for years to come, we will always still hear about Noor Ebrahim of the District 6 Museum.
Christine, I also understand that post COVID or during COVID, there was a threat of the museum closing down. How did you guys rally together to prevent that from happening?
So we struggled like many organizations. I think it's a matter of public record. Museum staff were on UIF. We were on half time. It took us a long time to sort of up our visitor numbers. But I want to say that the reason that the museum's doors are open, yes, there was some support from government, but the majority of support that we got was from locals. So people
Wow.
who donated to our fundraising campaign. It was such a strong show of support for how people see the museum as an important space to tell our community stories. But our we stayed open because the public fundraised for us.
Wow, that's amazing. Going forward now, you've lost a stalwart as far as the museum is concerned, but we do know that his legacy is so strong, together with all of you that have spent so very many years with him, making this museum what it is today, world renowned. You've also indicated the next batch of people that can come in to tell their stories are people in their 60s. But any other future plans for the ongoing curation of this museum, which I should imagine is an amazing landmark in Cape Town, an iconic landmark as far as visiting Cape Town is concerned, not only for the locals, but for people abroad as well.
Yes, I think they are former residents who are able to share their stories, but I think we must put a lot more faith and trust in the younger generation. So those in their 20s, their 30s, even younger, to be able to share what their learning is about apartheid and also to tell their personal story. We forget that young people live with the consequences of special apartheid, of forced
Absolutely.
removals. And so for them to share their story from that perspective, but to also share the story of District 6, that is our next phase. It's a very important phase because it's also about drawing younger generations and audiences into the museum so that the museum can live for the next 100 years.
Absolutely. And more and much, much more. We want it to be around for all of our future generations. Christian Julius, District 6 Museum's acting director and head of the archive of the museum, thank you indeed for sharing with us this morning. And once again, our heartfelt condolences not only to the people at the museum, but to the late Noor Ibrahim's family as well. Please pass on our condolences to them. You go
Thank you
well,
very
keep
much.
strong, and God bless.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The time is 8:45 news and views on Salam Media. Let's go for an ad break as we always do, and then we will go on to our final interview of the morning.